You're listening to the Counterpower After Hours at WDBX 91.1 FM. This is Loon, your host. I'm also here with
Alex. And you're Todd.
All right. If at any moment you feel like writing to us, because you won't be able to call us today, unfortunately, but if any moment you feel particularly strong about something that we're talking about, or you have anything that you'd like to ask us, or anything that you'd like to request on this radio show, you can write to us at 214 North Washington Street, Carbondale, Illinois, 62901. And please address it to Flyover Info Shop, PSWG. Especially if you are in USP Marion and you are being held hostage currently, we really encourage you to please write us. So once again, you can write to the Prison Solidarity Working Group, PSWG Flyover Info Shop at 214 North Washington Street in Carbondale, Illinois, 62901. All right, does anybody have anything they wanted to add before we jump into our complicated adventure here?
Let's start jumping hoops.
Okay, so this will be our first phone interview, and all this machinery is really complicated, so hopefully we can get this going. We will be interviewing. Do you want to introduce him, Tom?
Yeah, we're going to be talking to my friend and colleague, John Lash. John is a formerly incarcerated person, spent a few decades of his life in a Georgia state prison, and has a really interesting story to tell. And so we thought we would just bring him on and talk to him tonight.
All right, great. Do you want to have John call us? Now. Okay.
John, you there? Did you call the number? Try it now. Yep. Here we go.
Just give us one moment.
Oh, come on, John.
Do we go with numbers in case
He's got it. Oh, man. There it is.
Here it is. Okay.
That is
Pick it up.
off this phone. That's a different phone.
Just pick that up.
Man.
Sorry, this is probably really weird. I don't really have anything else to say at the moment. I could play some music, but that would mess up the whole entire thing of getting him on air.
Text him the number. I guess that was that phone up there. So we need this phone.
What's the number here?
Okay, 1 second. We're just going to go to a song really quick because we're still trying to figure out this phone thing. Like I said, we've never done this before. We'll be right back.
À quoi ça sert? On est tous morts. À quoi tu sers? Je t'aime encore. Bataille déjà perdue, une histoire déjà entendue. C'est pas que je crois en rien, je crois plus tout court, ça me convient. Chez moi, je vote pas, je suis pas chez toi, il fait trop froid. J'ai perdu mon drapeau, je crois plutôt que j'ai brûlé. J'ai oublié tous mes sabots, j'ai oublié que c'était sacré. Je vais faire encore mort, du garder les genoux sont pas bien. Trop pressé de mourir pour écouter ton baratin. Je m'emmerde, j'ai mal aux yeux. Mais dans la vie, tous les hommes sont plus gueux. Je m'emmerde, et demain il pleut. Mais tellement rien à faire. Oblige à boire l'air conditionné, auditionné, attentionné, c'est oublié. Une vie pourrie vaut mieux qu'une putain d'illusion. Il serait pourri vaut mieux qu'une putain d'illusion. Trop les manchons à exprimer, heureusement qu'à la pêche je pue pour te rappeler que demain il pleut. Je m'emmerde, j'ai mal aux yeux, mais dans ma vie tous les hommes sont plus vieux. Je m'emmerde, demain il pleut, mais dans la vie tous les chiens sont boiteux.
You're listening to Counterpower After Hours once again. If you are in USP Marion, please write to us at 214 North Washington Street, Carbondale, Illinois 62901. You can address it to PSWG, that stands for Prison Solidarity Working Group, at the Flyover Info Shop. I think we might have figured out our phone interview thing, so I'm going to go ahead and push a certain button and see what happens. Hello?
John? Oh, no.
No, it's not working. Wait, hold on. John? Did you hang up the phone? Hello?
John, are you there? Oh, no.
It's not working. Okay. I don't know. No.
I can hear one there, and we can hear you.
You can hear
We
them.
can hear you guys in the phone.
Okay.
Wow, I can't hear John at all.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Go to some music, dude.
Okay, sorry.
Caller.
Oh, here we go. Hold on. Hello? I should be able to hear him in his headphones.
Go to some music, dude.
Hello? No, I don't hear him. Okay.
We're really sorry about this. This
yeah.
is such a bummer.
Okay, 1 second.
Put on some music,
I'll
dude.
go back to some music until we figure this out.
We'll figure it out.
Turn this up.
Some people think little girls should be seen and not heard, but I think Our bondage up yours! 1, 2, 3, 4!
right. Once again, this is Counterpower After Hours. This is Loon. We're going to try one more time with this phone thing here because we had an interview that we are trying to get on air. So just give us a second. Let's see. All right. Alex? Tell me when you hang up. Okay, I'll turn the gun to run now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, now I can hear you. Finally.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right, so if everybody else wants to come back in here, just give us 1 second. That was very confusing. Do I have everything else right? These are all...
I think so.
Okay, cool.
That's
And these
odd.
two, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Hey, John.
Hey.
My name is Loon, and we have your friend Todd here, and we also have Alex. I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself briefly. We already kind of did a little introduction
Okay.
for you, but you can tell us about yourself briefly, and then we can go into some of the questions that we had for you.
Sure. I'm glad. I don't know. Did Todd introduce me already?
I
Yes.
said a little bit. I said that you were a formerly incarcerated person, and that's as far as I got, I think. Why don't you just, maybe if you just pick up.
Okay. Yeah. So true. I'm formerly incarcerated. Glad to not be incarcerated now. I did almost 25 years in Georgia for murder. I had a life sentence. Technically, I still have a life sentence. I'm on parole, and I got out in 2009 and went back to school to study conflict management and to pursue some interests of mine. And now I'm the director of Georgia Conflict Center in Athens, Georgia. So, how's that for an intro?
Awesome. Do you feel comfortable with me asking exactly why you were in prison? Could you give us a little background on that?
I could, yeah, sure. And it's one of those stories that could take a lot of time, but the brief version is I was a angry man, a young man growing up, and I had joined the Army, and I was home on leave, and I got to talking to a friend of mine, and he had a situation going on, and he wanted someone killed, and I ended up doing it for him, along with another friend of ours, and it's quite a shocking thing to say, I'm sure, especially when people don't know me, and what I often tell people is that in the work I do now, especially around violence, that decisions that people make in the moment make sense to them, and all I can say is that in that moment it made sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite anarchist prisoners, Sean Swain, had murdered somebody in self-defense. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sean Swain, but if you haven't, you should definitely check him out. He's in prison for life. But I would like to know, because it's kind of an odd case that you're out and not there for life, rotting behind bars. I'm just curious, how did that happen?
In Georgia, when I got a life sentence in 1985, it was still an offense that was eligible for parole, unlike Illinois. And I did my time, and I was rocking along. I didn't think I was going to get out for many years, and then in 2000 and let's see, my brain's going a little fuzzy on me. In 2006, one of my co-defendants got out. And then I just started writing and asking folks that I knew on the outside to write the parole board. And I ended up getting an interview with someone from the parole board, and here in Georgia, there's a 5-member board that votes to release you, and they did. So, I couldn't say exactly why. I had folks on the outside trying to help me, say, hey, this is a guy that could do some good if he were released. And, yeah, that's it. That's the long and short of it. It's a very mysterious process.
Yeah, it's very mysterious for sure.
Right.
I was very surprised.
It's a secret, right?
Yeah,
It's a safe secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be like a conflictual sort of question, but do you think it would have been different if you, I'm assuming that you are a white male?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it would have been different if you were of other ethnic background?
Do you mean would I have gotten out?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I had many friends who were African American who were also had most of my friends. It turns out, if you do a lot of time, a lot of your friends also have a lot of time. That's just the way it works out. And many of them did get out. And I don't know. That's a great question. Whether there's a difference. My gut feeling is that there might be. There might be. Yeah. But I don't have any data to back that up. Yeah.
So, what was this something that happened while you were incarcerated? What made you get into conflict management? Like, where was that desire? Was that preceding, or did that come out after, or during?
Well, as I very briefly described myself as a young man, I was 18 when I went to prison, and I had been in for a couple of years. I'd been in for a couple of years, I guess, 2 or 3 years maybe, and one day I had an epiphany to just ask myself, why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I in this place in this time right now? And for me, that started a path that led to a practice of self-reflection, of meditation and study that caused me to look at how did the violence that I was manifesting in the world, where did that come from? And so, I guess to answer your question, it started with myself. How do I want to be in the world? And the answer I came to was not someone who was violent, not someone who was aggressive. And over time, developing that in myself, I would naturally find myself working with others, people who were angry. Prisons, many people in prison are quite angry, and with good reason often. And they would say, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" So I'd kind of find myself in that third-party role a lot of times of mediating between people. And then along the way, I discovered something called nonviolent communication, and I'm not sure if any of y'all are familiar with it. Well, I'm sure Todd is. But this in particular really lit a fire in me to look at specifically how are we thinking, how are we communicating, and at the same time I got really interested in restorative justice that asks a lot of the same question. So I built on that, and at the time that I discovered those things, I was locked up, of course, and I didn't believe I was going to get out. And I had a lot of sense. I said, hey, what am I going to do with myself? And together with some friends of mine, I started sharing this, these things that I'd been studying, and we started working together, studying together, and teaching other folks. And it just developed this idea that we wanted to make our world different in some way. So that's it, really. And then when I, kind of unexpectedly found myself on the outside, I just decided, hey, I'll kind of want to do the same thing. These were things that were really meaningful to me. So here I am.
That's great. Could you give us like a quick synopsis maybe, or elaborate on, you said nonviolent communication. You said that was a big change for you. What were some of the things that appealed to you about it, or that, tactics that really changed the way you interact with others?
Yeah. One of the great things about nonviolent communication is the underlying theory is that humans are driven by the same set of needs, irrespective of, their culture, their race, or, anything, even their time. So if that's true, and that these needs that we carry around with us all the time are the source of why we do what we do, in attempts to meet those needs, then I have the capacity to understand other people. I have the capacity to understand not only my own motivation, but the motivations of others. And it gives you a way to connect with people that doesn't endorse what they're doing, if that makes sense to you. Like, I can understand that you want safety. I just have a problem maybe that you're, putting a pistol in my face to get money so that you'll have safety, But I don't have any problem you having safety. So this ability to connect was, for me, very concrete. And, I had spent a lot of time, thinking about nonviolence and, living. I was a practicing Buddhist at the time, and, trying to manifest myself in the world in a nonviolent way. But this really gave me some practical steps, I guess, or strategies for how can I talk to other folks. I think I was doing okay before that, but this really put a sharper edge on it. And when I started sharing it with others, just this idea that the reason that people do what they do isn't really because of us, which it sure seems that way a lot of times. I saw immediately that some of the guys I shared with, that some of their violence started to decrease because they didn't feel as threatened. I don't know if I answered your question. I think maybe I went tangential on you, but... yeah.
Oh, no, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess this question will require you to digress just a little bit, but when you were in prison, because you were there for quite a while, what are your thoughts on prison rebellion? Because I know that you're speaking from a nonviolent perspective, and the word violence or violent can be seen in many ways, especially because I'm a woman. Sometimes violence means something different to me than it does to men, even. But I'm just curious, what your thoughts are on prison rebellion, and did you experience or partake in any of it? And do you think it's a useful tactic, i.e. strikes, work stoppages, destroying segregation or isolation units or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, and of course we could, talk a long time about these different definitions of what violence is. First and foremost, I would say I'm more interested in what do we do with violence with humans, right? Violence against humans is really important to me. Against property, not so much. I get it that people might be upset. My own experience with that was I'm trying to think. I'm thinking back over all those years. There were times when we would slow down work. There were times when we would stop working. My guess is, I had a few friends that did time in Illinois and many other places too. The level of organization in the prisons in the South was pretty low, and so it would often be just some guys saying, forget this, the hell with this, let's just do it. We're not going to work today. So, it wouldn't be very organized. So then they would, employ different strategies to try to, entice people or bully people into going back to work or doing whatever it is they wanted to see happen. So I was in a couple of sit-downs, and I was never in any kind of riots or anything, any takeovers or anything like that. So I don't know if that... And I guess, did you ask what I thought about those things, too?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Because here, especially the folks on the Counterpower After Hours, we partake in a lot of prison solidarity stuff, and so we kind of marvel at, prison rebellion, things like that, or thoughts that are more rebellious rather than subordinate or something to the tormentors, because, in the prison manual, it will say that the correctional officer is the tormentor and you are the subject in a simple torture situation. And that's kind of grimy, and you're supposed to be there for whatever reason they tell you. And it's kind of contradictory. So I'm just curious, what do you think about it as coming from the perspective now where you are, I guess?
Let me say first, I believe that prisons as they stand, in this, anything that we imagine of as a prison, I think should be done away with, period. And so what strategies you might employ to do that, I'm quite open to anything. I think that for me, I was actually talking to Todd about this earlier, it's a question of where you are. Where am I at on the ground? I work now today with young folks who are often African American or Latino, who are more likely to get arrested and all those kinds of things, more likely to get kicked out of school, and so we really focus in specifically with these folks. What can you young folks do right now to increase, to not be killed? Honest, let's just say it, right? Like,
Sure.
I don't want this kid to be killed. But never am I forgetting that there's this whole structure sitting on top that's creating this situation, even if I'm not directly addressing that situation. So for me, and I'm guessing for many people in prison, your number one priority is, how do I survive? How do I make it through this? Do I have hope on the other side of getting out? I think that I always viewed things with that lens, and as I got, as I was in longer and longer and longer, and as I got hopefully more sophisticated in my understanding of what was going on, I began to see the system and how the system is, it's a domination system, right? And in some ways it just mirrors the systems that we have on the outside, too.
Yeah.
It's just a really extreme, stripped-down version. I always tell people, like, I was so dense, like, you just had to totally strip it away to show me these things. But I think that, morally, yes. I think if someone finds themselves, and that's the decisions they make, that they want to try to break this thing down, then yeah, let's do it. I don't want to see, I don't know if it's possible, I don't want to see the guys on the inside come to harm. That's probably my number one concern. And I understand, I guess, in that way that, there's a huge threat of force, there's a huge threat of violence against them. So it's always manifesting itself.
And so with that, wanting to prevent the harm, and you talked about transformative justice and stuff, how does that relate to, like, how you view this? Because currently in our society, we have this idea of, like, a retributive justice, right? And, like, we send people to prison, and we're going to punish them, and hopefully if we punish them enough and hard enough or whatever, they'll rehabilitate somehow. Given what you've been saying, that almost seems like the completely wrong-headed approach. And I was wondering both what you thought about that, and then also, like, what sort of alternative you might present in a sort of more transformative model.
Well, I would say, as you point out, the retributive model really doesn't work. Or let's say it only works to the extent that I can, stand over top of you with a stick or something to make you do what I want. The way I tell people is, the retributive model is ask three questions. The first question is, what rule has been broken? The second is, who's to blame for that? And the third is, how do I hurt them so that they'll stop doing that thing? A transformative approach or a restorative approach is going to first ask the question, who has been harmed? And what do we need to do to address those harms? Who needs to come? Who needs to be in that discussion? And so if you take the first model, the retributive model, the institution or the state or the whatever the structure is, the so-called offense is against that structure, right? That puts a totally different lens on the way that things happen. The bottom line is prison doesn't work. If it worked, there might be some moral argument for it, but it doesn't. And almost everybody that goes to prison, in my observation of 25 years almost, they come out worse off. They come out traumatized, or they come out, more likely to do things that we would probably rather not see. And the people that don't come out that way, it's not because of the prison or anything that happened. It's in spite of the prison. It's in spite of the punishment. So for me, it means, how do we want to manifest justice ourselves? How do we want to manifest justice in our world? And that means having those conversations. Right now, all of us, basically, we outsource our justice to the government or to the school or to our job or whatever. So what kind of justice system do we want to see? And that's where we start the conversation with people. How do we have justice between us, you and me, right now? We don't have to go all the way to the extreme of, if you kill someone, we can start right now. And that's why this approach works with kids. That's why it works in schools. For me, it's about who's really affected by what's happened, and can we get them together to talk about, one, what needs to happen to repair, and 2, why did this happen? What are the causes? Can we get some understanding around that? And 3, what do we want to do now in the future? What do we want to change so that this won't happen again? I mean, that's the conversation I want to have with the direct players in any kind of anything, any kind of. I call it conflict, even if it's something that might get labeled as crime. I don't know if I answered your question. What do you think?
No, that was beautiful. Thank you. That's wonderful thoughts. Sorry, did you say something?
Well, I have a direct response. I was just curious, like, what are the strategies or direct actions that you are taking with folks to prevent them from going in prison, but also in some way or the other being, I don't know if you'd consider yourself prison abolitionist, since you're trying to prevent people from going to prison, and you're also like very much against the prisons and you don't see them working, so obviously you want to see the walls come down. But it's like, what are you doing as a group or an organization?
So I always tell people there's 2 things that we do at George Conflict Center, and one is we share the nonviolent communication with people, or similar strategies. I particularly like sharing these with people that are already locked up. Or we do some work at the jail. There's a diversion center here, and we're trying to get going directly to the prison here in the county I live in. And at schools. Now, I share this work with anyone. I share it with, old and young and rich and poor, whatever. But our heart is in the work, in thinking. If I go work with a bunch of kids that have been expelled from school, I know, even if they don't, I know these kids are under threat, right? These kids are already in the school-to-prison pipeline. They're pretty far down it. And so for me, it's trying to give them some extra tools, some extra armor, whatever you want to call it, to help them navigate the current situation they find themselves in. At the same time, we want to be able to put it on the table to acknowledge, hey, this is messed up, right? Like the fact that, a young black kid can, do an action, do something and get expelled, and a young white kid could do exactly the same action and then get sent to the counselor or get a diagnosis or something. That's a problem, right? And I want to acknowledge that problem. If we work with people who are poor or whatever, it doesn't matter. Anybody that's marginalized, I think for me, the first thing to do is lay it out there on the table that I can see the reality, that we share this reality. And without that, if I were only to try to share something with people that I thought would be useful to them, and I didn't acknowledge the reality, then what am I doing? It's like I'm trying to fix them. That's kind of the standard, service delivery model of, saving people. That's not really what we're into. We're into giving people these skills so that they can survive, so that they can increase their chances of engaging the structure, right? The structures that we find ourselves in are incredibly powerful and entrenched. So it pays to kind of wake up, to have some tools to engage those. I think that for me, I want to give them these tools because when you're in prison, it's hard to express yourself sometimes, and I don't mean that you can't express yourself. I mean the consequences for expressing yourself are so much different than what people on the outside might experience. So one of the things that I learned was, how can I still say what I want to say, but say it in a way that might increase the chance that they'll actually listen, I mean, it's easy when you're locked up to kind of objectify the people that are running the prison, right? The guards and the staff, the teachers or whatever. And the fact is, they're people too. And underneath it all, they're part of the system, but they're just trapped in their own way. And what I learned over the years was, I can engage people. I can engage and say, hey, here's what's going on. And they might alter what they're doing, or they might at least acknowledge it. Here in Georgia, I don't know how it is where y'all are, but they build prisons in Georgia in poor communities. And the people that come work at the prison are poor, I mean, it's definitely a really I don't know how far out the strategy is, but they build it in a way that these people come to work because they need to work to support their family or whatever. Does that make sense to y'all?
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I want to not see them as an enemy. I want to see the structure as an enemy, or maybe see the higher-ups as an enemy.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I mean, you mentioned like an important part of this is like learning the causes of why something happened, right? To solve it, which is something our prison system completely neglects. Because like at most they're interested in the motive to make sure the charges stick, right? Like this, like why did this happen? Okay, we have a reason, your reason for doing it, and that now we can fully charge you. But there's no attempt to analyze underlying causes, as you mentioned, poverty being the huge one, and
they don't fit the conversation, right? They don't fit our current justice conversation, right? Those kinds of questions. People don't. I don't know anyone who doesn't believe in personal responsibility, right? Like I talk to people of all different types. And at the same time, somehow we use that as a way to not acknowledge these underlying issues, these underlying structural problems. Why can't you have both? That's what my question is.
That's really good.
Right? Why can't I want to be able to have personal responsibility for decisions I make. I want it, right? Like I don't want to be, I am responsible for what I do. And I want to acknowledge what else is going on, what's out there in the world that's causing these things to happen. We can have both those conversations. They're not exclusive of one another.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do you have advice for people trying to, like, let's say, a conflict arises, and let's say they don't want to outsource their justice, right? They don't want to go to some strange third-party judge, who doesn't know anyone involved to, hear whatever their decision is. What are some steps they can take to try and make it so it's more immediate and more transformative?
I think that what you want to do in the beginning is think about what would you like to see in a justice system. Write it down. Make a list. If you've got someone to do it with, that's awesome. The thing is, we construct justice systems with one another all the time. Almost all of us that have grown up in this culture, and I say that in the broadest sense, we have internalized punitive models of justice. I drive down the road, and I've got a punitive model of, that guy drove faster than me, so he's an idiot, and this guy's driving slower than me, so he's some kind of moron, right? Like, I'm judging people all the time. All of us we're swimming in judgment, right? So the ability to kind of sit down and break away from that a little bit and say, what would I like to see happen between you and me when something goes wrong or when there's a conflict? I want it to be fair. I want it to be equitable. I want it to be healing, or whatever list that we were able to create with one another. That's the very beginning. If we can create that list and start having those conversations, then we can work on agreements around how do we manifest this in our world. If you and me and Todd were to set up a system together, how do we want those conversations to happen? Humans, the basics of restorative circles, which I don't think I've mentioned that, but, a lot of restorative approaches to justice is dialogue. And now dialogue means that humans, by their nature, have the ability to exchange meaning with one another, right? And I think that for me, so many things that we learn in facilitating these conversations is just get out of the way, right? Let the conversation happen. Sometimes the conflict is extreme, or not extreme is probably not the right word. Sometimes the conflict is intense, and so we need a little support, maybe somebody to remind us of what it is we're talking about. But I don't care, really. You can be very young, very old, all these ways that we judge people, their mental health, their intelligence, or whatever. Humans have the ability to exchange meaning and to understand. I can understand what you're saying. You can understand what I'm saying. If we set up a process that lets us take turns or whatever, transfer this meaning back and forth and set up some way to check whether we're getting it, right? That's as simple as saying, what would you like? If you and Todd had a conflict, I'd say, what do you want Todd to know about this? And then, Todd, what do you hear him saying? And then I just check back with you. Is that it? And that's such a simple process. The other thing is, if we want to try to create a system of justice that's transformative or restorative, then we've got to ask some questions around power. Like, who's got the power in the situation? We've got to ask questions about safety. We've got to ask questions about resources. I mean, it's not easy, and at the same time, I think it's something that people really long for. When I start having these conversations, I can't get people to shut up about how they want to see a justice system be. You know, we go on and on and on. We have to break the conversation and say, okay, we're moving on. People are hungry for this. People know there's something screwed up about the way that we do things right now. But they just, you know, often they're just not quite sure what to do next. How's that? I'm not sure if I answered your question.
You've answered every one of them wonderfully. Yeah, that's.
Oh, thanks. I'm glad. I feel like I go off sometimes. So.
Oh no, that's wonderful. Yeah, and I mean, I'm certainly one of those people that would love to see that change. It's interesting, the way in which we have that in our, like, what we consider our close relationships, right? Is like one of the things we like about it with our close friends or family or spouses or whatever, is that you can have conflict and then deal with it, right? Like, that is, like, you talk it out, and you may be mad, and you may not like what they're saying about you, and you bounce it back and forth. But, like, the thing is you can get over conflict, and that's what makes those relationships strong. And we sort of forget that you can do that with a larger circle, right? You can do that with anyone, actually, and not just those people that you know really well.
That's right. That's right. I think that's exactly right. And that you reminded me, the motto of the conflict center here is, conflict is inevitable, violence is not. And, you know, conflict is just a state of living, right? It's just, as Dominic Barter, I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, the guy that developed a restorative circles approach in Brazil, you know, he says that the conflict is just feedback, right? Like, we're in systems together all the time. So when you and me have a conflict, it's a form of feedback. It's drawing our attention. If I can look at it in that way, then, you know, it's a huge vehicle for growth, for making things better, making things the way we want them to be. It's about just, you know, sharing that. Most people are scared of conflict, right? Most people avoid it if they can. But that's because we don't have this orientation to it as a potentially beneficial thing.
Yeah, avoiding conflict or distancing ourselves from conflict is a way that the oppressors keep us complacent and complicit with their terrible power dynamic, their terrible power structures that they have imposed on us for thousands of years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I like that. I like y'all's motto and everything that you've been saying. Moss is here, who you haven't heard from yet, and I believe he might have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, I don't have a question.
Okay.
I just liked what y'all were saying there, but I think it's not just a tool to keep us oppressed. I think this is a conflict that runs through all of us, oppressor and oppressed. And I really like the whole restorative justice, not just thinking of like guards or other folks, and there may be some like sociopaths at the top, but understanding these conflicts run through both oppressor and oppressed, and it's just not that simple.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I'm no historian, but hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, I got a little feedback there.
Oh, that's right.
You know, my understanding is that, say, if I look at human history, the vast swath of human history when we were mostly living in small groups like that still exist are very egalitarian, right? They just are. When we started getting power structures in place, you know, whatever you think, you know, 12,000 years ago or so, that's when these patterns began to emerge. So it's so deep in us. I really like what you're saying, like, it's not just, and I mean, if I'm living in the United States, in some ways I am an oppressor, right? Like, I am, willingly or not, I'm engaging, I'm supporting in some way what's going on, what the government does around the world, what our culture does, how do the resources come from the south to the north or whatever. This pattern is running in us from the way that we treat our kids, from the way that we treat our lovers, anything, our animals. I mean, it's on and on and on. That we have these ideas so deeply entrenched in us. And so it's this ability to sit and have these conversations and to build systems of support with one another. You know, if I can find someone who has these ideas who I can share, we can work together to kind of, hey, you check me, I'll check you. You know, let's kind of keep this thing going together. You might see something that I'm doing, and I might see something that you're doing, and let's build an agreement around it. How do we support each other and live in the way that we want to live? Yeah.
I have like sort of a simple question for you then, and pulling this out of the context of even you know, police repression, prison industrial complex, but like really basic, like how do you get people to stop being resistant to conversations about conflict? Because there's people in my own life who you can't seem to go beyond anything that's superficial or like deepen the relationship or the bonds. And like there's even this thing called community, and I personally think that white people don't know it. They don't really understand what community is. Like we don't know what that is yet. And I'm just curious, like how do we, or how do you how do you see I guess like initiating that conversation where it's being accepted, where it's being embraced and embodied in some way?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm really reminded of one thing, that definition of community that I heard Dominic Barter say more than once. The community are the people that I can't easily get away from. Think about that, right? Not so much communities of affinity, right? You know, there's people who think that being in a Facebook group is community, right?
Yeah.
Or something. You know, or being part of a group.
Yeah.
But if I can pretty easily unplug from it, and I'm not against those things, I understand the reason that people do them, but if I can kind of unplug and there's not much consequence, or something bad happens to them but it doesn't really affect me, or something good, then we might not actually be in what I think of at least as community. We're in community with a lot of people that we probably don't want to be in community with, right? So, and it kind of goes to your point, right, of how do I have these conversations? I think that, you know, we talk about something in restorative justice, and not to be too, restorative circles in particular. I worry sometimes that it'll seem a little woo-woo to people, but Dominic talks about something called the restorative flame, and what that means is, where is this already happening? Like anything that we want to see, it's not like we invented anything, right? Like humans have been doing this stuff for whatever you believe. You know, I think, 500,000 years or whatever. So humans have been doing this a long time. So it's already happening. It's not so much always that we're bringing something new as it is we're uncovering or unconditioning ourselves, right, from these patterns that we've picked up. If I want to look around my community and see, where is that? You know, who's that person who's already creating these conversations, or who's that person that everyone goes to when they have a problem, or whatever, right? I want to be conscious about noticing, where am I in community? Who am I in community with? A lot of times I'm in community with people and I don't recognize it, or I think I'm in community with people, but actually I'm not. So kind of bringing a lot of consciousness to that question first, so that's really internal, right? And then if I see that we're in community with each other, and I think, hey, here's somebody who might be open to what I'm talking about, I'm going to have that conversation. Let's just build it with people that are willing to build it with us right now. If we build a system, you and me could build a system in a community of 100 people. If other people see it over time, we can invite them to join. Hey, you want to be a part of our system? Come on. How would you like to see it? How would you like to see the system be? You know, invite participation in the system. You know, not say, here's the system, here's the rules. Say, here's what we're doing right now. What do you think? You want to be part? What would you like to add to that? So it's incredibly slow. And there's an image that the same guy Dominic gave me one time, because I was kind of lamenting, hey, we're trying to do this restorative justice thing, and it just seems like nothing's happening. And he said, look, you're in this river of punitive thinking, a river of punitive justice. And he said, you're in your little restorative justice kayak. You know, sometimes it's all we can do to not be swept away. sometimes holding your ground and just moving forward a little bit. Probably holding your ground is not a great metaphor for the river, right? But anyway, moving forward is that in itself is what we need to be doing. I mean, it's taken a long time to create things the way they are, and it might take a long time to shift things. But I have an orientation towards what I call the hyper-local. Who are the people with me right now? How can we do this right now, right here? How can we stay mindful in this moment of what it is, of how justice is manifesting in our world?
Right on. Alex, did you have any more questions?
I did not. That was, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit curious with this whole, because I've been thinking about community a lot lately, and I like what you say about like communities, the people you can't get away from, and I'm starting to sort of have this like beginnings of developing an understanding of like society, much of society as it is, as like being a strong rejection of community, and of having to deal with things that are hard and like other people's problems. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, and I was also wondering like where is it hard for you, and like where have been some of the things that have been like hard to like surmount in terms of like dealing with just being with other people and sort of connecting or not connecting, or like these barriers within yourself.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm carrying a lot of patterns that a lot of people are carrying around race and gender and age and all of those things. And, we ask a question when we do restorative circles. Part of the process is to check in with the facilitator about are there any thoughts or fixed ideas they have that are limiting them from seeing the full humanity of everyone. And so there's a kind of constant checking in to see where am I manifesting this oppression or this prejudice or whatever you call it. I mean, it's a practice, right? I mean, if I am conditioned, which I believe we all are, then to decondition myself or recondition myself, it takes intent, right? And I think that's what makes us human, maybe, or part of what makes us human is this ability to question our own programming, to have this moment of seeing the program run in my head, but also having a little bit of distance and saying, that's interesting, let's see what we can do about that, not being unconscious to my programming. So I think for me it's about putting people in my life that can help me ask those questions, putting people in my life that can support me in what it is that I want to do. And there's so many barriers. I live in Athens, Georgia, which is where the University of Georgia is. And so I've been here about 4 years, and I guess this is a town of several 100,000 people. And when I first came here, it had a very nice kind of it was a great music scene, it's just very, it's a fun place to live. And then after a while, I said, wow, there's a lot of poor people here, there's a lot of, most of the poor people here are African American. Why is that? Most of the working class people here are, if they work at the university, they work these really low-paying jobs. And then there's these kind of enclaves of folks who make more money. So, there's a split from the university to the community. There's a split from black to white, and now Latino population has really increased here. There's a split from people that, come from out of town, students, there's 30,000 students or whatever, and the rest of the folks. And I think that just being here for a while, hanging out, going to, I spend quite a bit of time going to African American communities, talking to African American folks, and just saying, hey, how are we in community together? What's going on? It's like opening myself up to being in community. I'm a white guy. I'm 49 years old, and in our society, that's pretty close to the top, just for getting kind of free check on things, and so I could check out, right? Like I could check out, I could cruise. So for me, it means keeping it real with myself, and getting people in my life that can help me keep it real.
That's wonderful. I'm sorry, we're just sitting here soaking in your great advice.
Great. Thanks.
Do you have a response to that? No.
I don't really have any other questions.
But if you had anything you would like to, you want to ask us, or you want to share to the people listening, or whatever, or to wrap it up, feel free.
Yeah. Well, Todd was telling me that a lot of your listeners are folks that are in prison near there.
We have. I don't know if it's a lot, but well, maybe because it's so late that there's not very many people listening, so they probably are a large percentage.
Yeah. Well,
they're in. I was going to say they're in USP Marion, which is a supermax facility. Online, it will say that it's medium security, but that is not true. Moss, what are you trying to say?
We actually got a letter today. I don't know if you saw, from someone at Marion who was sort of going over that. But
okay, I will go get that letter. Anyways, I don't know if
I'm just really, Todd told me that, and I was really drawn to that, to imagine these guys listening to this, and to listen to y'all's show in general, and what you're doing, and to say to them, I think that one of the things that happened to me along the way of my time on the inside was the realization that there was a culture that we as prisoners kept alive. And there was, there is oppression, and there's a huge system of domination, right, from the administration, from the government, and there was also a system that we as prisoners used against each other. I don't know if that's the way we would say it, but there was a system that we had where if you cross this line, then I'm supposed to stab you, I'm supposed to hit you, or whatever, and after I'd been in quite a few years, and I'm working with my friends, and we were doing this nonviolent communication, and we're sharing it. We ended up teaching classes on it, and the thought emerged, or the idea emerged, that we could wait around forever, right? Like, if the prison is violent amongst the prisoners, the administration is never going to fix that, right? Like, I don't think you're never going to get saved by someone else, right? It means, for me, waking up to the power that I had as someone who had been in a long time. You gain a certain amount of power, right? Recognizing that and saying, how do I want it to be? How can we shift it right here, right now, horizontally, right? Like we tried to shift things horizontally. I don't really believe any other kind of change is possible. I don't. And so I just encourage whatever guys are doing on the inside to make that world that they find themselves in better in some way, more humane, more human. Then I really encourage them to just continue to do that, to look for people, and to consider they have a tremendous power. They have a tremendous power to create. Prison is just full of human beings. They're not any different, and I'm sure you all know that. So many people have this idea that prisoners are different in some way, but they're not. Really, nobody's different. So, I don't know. I'm just really touched, and I'm really happy to think that those folks might be listening, and I really was just thankful for the opportunity to come on and talk to you all tonight.
Well, we really appreciate everything you said, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right.
All right, we'll see if we can figure out how to hang up the phone here, too.
Okay, I'm going to hang up.
Okay.
It's lovely talking to you all.
Great, thank you.
To all of you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that's all.
Hello, all. This is Counterpower After Hours. This is your host, Loon, and I'm here with a few others.
Moss and Alex.
And I just got some wonderful, beautiful news just 1 second before we wow the interview, because that was awesome. We have a new writer from USP Marion, so thank you. I don't know your name yet because I haven't read your letter.
And he hasn't quite given us permission yet to say his name on radio, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. But anyways, if you are listening, you can write to us at 214 North Washington Street, Carbondale, Illinois 62901. And you could address it to the Flyover Info Shop, PSWG, that stands for Prison Solidarity Working Group. All right, so awesome interview. Does anybody have their immediate comments that they wanted to make?
No, I just want to bathe in the...
Oh, sorry. Some more silence because we had enough of it in the beginning, or we didn't have enough of it, right? 15 minutes of jumbled, weird stuff going on. But yeah, do you, Moss or Alex, y'all were the ones that wanted to discuss it further.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know where to go with it for sure because there's just so much in there, and it brings up a lot more questions than it necessarily does answers, which is how do we start working on ourselves and on each other and to build communities that we actually desire. I really liked him talking about, the idea of this concept of community as being those people you can't get away from. And particularly under our current system, there's a powerful reality to that, right? Whether it's coworkers and bosses or your neighbors, and particularly here in America, most of us don't have any close relationships with any of them or don't even know them. It's weird. You can live, your houses can be a yard away from each other, get touched by the same falling branch, but you never talk to them or never see them. And so in that sense, you might say, oh, they're in my neighborhood, they're part of my community. But if you don't talk to them, you don't interact with them, and nothing that happens to either of you really affects the other one unless it's directly affecting, that location, then you're not really a community. And so how do we go about building communities, and then how do we go about building healthy ones or transforming the current ones we have, let's say with coworkers or bosses, into healthy ones? And part of that is by opening that dialogue, as he was talking about, and trying to communicate meaning. But from my own perspective, that also means overthrowing capitalism, because you can't open a dialogue among equals if you're not equal. Right? So if we want to have this conversation with the hierarchs of our society, they're going to have to step down. or everyone's just going to have to get a stool or something. I don't really know. Maybe if we all have thrones, it'll work out.
Yeah, I like that. I always do have trouble dealing with hierarchy and establishing relationships while negotiating that, not getting... screwed over by saying because this person has power over me. But yeah, who do you go to? I feel like a lot of people really want community and identify this as these close, meaningful relationships as something that they really value and desire. Especially as with the social media stuff, we're getting more and more distant. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like people simultaneously play up or value this sort of independence in their ability to not be connected to people, in terms of both self-sufficiency, where people have a hard time asking for help and sort of look down on those who do, in terms of whether that be sort of welfare state stuff or whether that be, beggars or even in smaller ways, and sort of pride themselves on being able to provide for themselves, even if they aren't really aware of the whole system connected to that. But I don't know. I feel like there's this tension that isn't really addressed in any of the literature I'm reading, of the kind of awfulness sometimes that you want to get away from, of dealing with other people's problems and dealing with other people who you don't necessarily like or get along with, and yet have to share this space with.
Mm-hmm. Are you looking for me to answer that?
Well, I don't know.
Come on, Loon. Where's your answer?
I don't know. I mean, certainly thinking in my own life, in a certain way, this a lot of talk about community and like finding the right people who are really supportive is like really validating, because at the info shop, not just like anyone who's ever there at all, but you know, through a lot of the people who I know now and have been for the past couple of years, I've been surrounding myself with these people, and I've been sort of becoming more vulnerable and dealing with intense things that I might have run away from before, and having to deal with like people who are kind of like problematic, but in like an honest way, and not just like pushing them away so I don't have to deal with them. And I think these are all good, and that's validating and all. But then I think to other parts of my life, like my family, for instance, like these are people who I don't want to deal with, and I'm like afraid to establish close relationships with, and yet, you know, they've known me for a pretty long time, and yeah, I think it's interesting, like, where do we draw these lines? Not to say that like everyone has to be in community with everyone that, you know, lives next door to them or has a blood relation with them, or who has like similar beliefs or whatever. But I think it's interesting, just sort of in this reflective kind of way, like where do we reject community and where do we seek it, and how do we go about it, and how do our ideas of like not being connected to other people's problems play into that?
What if we replace the word community with solidarity? Because that means something totally different, and that is recognizing other people's issues that maybe you don't quite share, but there is some resource that you might have that can contribute to liberating them from that struggle or whatever it is. And also solidarity is this thing that can't be destroyed by physical force. It is something that is like going on inside of us. And I mean, also it requires lots of action, but that's the other thing. Although Alex, I think, had like a direct response to you, but I also had like a question too. But I don't know, Alex, did you want to respond?
I mean, if you have a question more directly, but so it sounds like we need to make communities of solidarity. That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, I do have a response to what you said, but like, if you have a question, please go ahead.
Go with your response, because maybe...
I'm saying it might go other directions.
Okay. I guess I was going to ask you directly, Moss, you're talking about like having these sort of interpersonal transformations in your life where you feel like you are becoming more vulnerable and you are becoming more comfortable with conflict and working those things out. But I'm like curious, like, do you think part of that is like radical liberation and like the ability to recognize where your oppression and where other people's oppression is coming from, but also like having a critical perspective on yourself and the people around you, and the people who are not connecting in the way that you are, transforming in the way you are, haven't had these radical liberation, whatever, like, or they haven't like radicalized or politicized or something.
I mean, I think it helps to an extent, but I think maybe not a huge extent. I feel like the kinds of things that I'm talking about are more like the ideas behind them matter so much less than just doing them.
Sure.
And just like practicing and see what it, and like feeling it out. And I think some of the political ideas, like being around people who like I'm fighting against the world with in some sense, certainly like has facilitated that, at least with me, and also like facilitated like having to deal with, especially at the info shop, like some people who are harder to deal with, and in the past I might just have sort of like avoided these conflicts. But I don't know, I feel like that's not necessary. Like, I feel like there are a lot of people who have this radical consciousness and are around radical people, but don't, like, follow through in their practice and opening up. And I don't want to overemphasize like the being aware of things, because I think that's like really limited. Even though I think it's important, but it's just
Sure.
It's not what I've needed to focus on, because that's like being critical and reflexive is something that, like it's just been a part of me, and I think is a relatively, maybe not relatively common, but more common than like doing the actual practice of like being vulnerable, making mistakes, getting messy, dealing with things that are hard.
Okay.
And intense.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Like the way you put that, got me really connected with me. This idea of like avoiding conflict, right, or avoiding those people where it becomes messy, like, you know, and interacting with them, and uncomfortable. And so, and I was thinking on the large scale. I mean, this is what like prisons are all about, right? Is disappearing people. That is, we think that, oh, we have some conflictual problems, whether it's because of their poverty or their violence or their lack of empathy or their dislike for certain people, whatever. Like, but if we just shove them behind these walls, you know, and it's like, oh, well, that wasn't working, so then we had barbed wire, and then we had moats, and then, you know, you had everything, you know, make sure that those walls stay. But the problem hasn't gone away, right? We just tried to avoid it in these very large camps. And so I'm thinking about how can we avoid that? And now going back to the micro level, in my own experience, like you mentioned family, right? Extended family. And I have extended family too. And like we've known each other for a long time and we care about each other. They've cared for me since I was a young kid. Like I owe them a lot. I wouldn't be here otherwise without their aid, both resources and emotional and all of that. But at the same time, like we have very, very different beliefs. And different actions upon those beliefs. And like a complete transparency or openness would probably lead to hostility and hatred, or even just a straight up like ostracization. And so when you try and build these connections, right, which I do sometimes, you know, it's almost, I'm not sure where the line is to where it becomes like false, a facade. Like I feel like I'm bluffing them, like, oh yeah, and we can talk and I can share our likeness and I can change my words to sort of meet their belief system and we can have more interesting conversations. But at the same time, like, while we're trying to build this honest relationship, I'm doing the exact opposite. But at the same time, if I don't have that level of deceit or level of like holding back my own thoughts in certain ways or certain formulations of them, then I'm not opening the conversation at all. And so I don't expect you guys to have the answers to that, but I'm interested in how that comes about in the ways that when we're trying to build these healthy relationships, communities or solidarity or whatever, like how do we go about it with those who are very different from us or those who we disagree with strongly, who maybe aren't that different from us, like my family members aren't that different from me, just our beliefs, and like how do we do it without going the wrong direction? Because sometimes I feel like I can very easily get along with people that I despise, actually. Like, you know, like, right? It's like, oh, I can, you know, play along and be nice and whatever, but you're still a white supremacist prick. Like, and what do I do about that? How do I make that opening without being dishonest to myself and them?
I think that's a really good question. Like a part of me was just like, meet them where they're at and take them to where you are. But that doesn't work in the case of a white supremacist necessarily. But then there's also the question, if we even identifying as anarchists or something, need to remain open to build networks of solidarity, to wash away lines that have been drawn, possibly. Okay, we could do that, but at what point do we stop holding our ground, or like what point does that mean that we stop like holding? I don't know another way to put this. At what point are we like dishonest with ourselves, our own beliefs?
Well, I mean, I think there's this falseness in thinking that like to get along with someone you have to agree with them and be agreeable. Not that it's not like scary and I don't have these thoughts and act on this as well. But I mean, I act on it a lot. But but I think I don't know. some of these, like, yeah, this is good radio right here.
Would a concrete example
Stuttering out.
Because I have...
Well, I just want to make the point that, like, you're saying, like, bring them over to your side, and how do you do that? And I think a major obstacle to making connections with people who are different than you are is thinking that you have to, like, win and, like, bring them over to your side, instead of just, like, I need to understand this person better and understand how they can have a perspective that is, like, deeply offensive to me.
And so I want to push on that just a little bit to give what I find to be a very common example for me. Mm-hmm. So, and that's dealing with misogyny. Like, I'll be with, let's say, coworkers or people I've met on the street or people that I generally get along with, right? But they're not going to open up to me, particularly not to talk about feminism or something, without me building a rapport with them, right? Sure. First, and that may offer it. But what does building that rapport mean? It might mean reinforcing the very misogynistic tendencies. Do I laugh at that joke that he just said? Do I play along when he's like, man, I'd really like to tap that? Something like that. Like, what do you do? And the question is, and you see how the tension actually develops immediately. And it's not just about getting them on my side. It's not about that. But it's like, how do I connect to this person while not being dishonest fully, but at the same time not straight up reinforcing the very views that I don't want to do? And like some of these people, I mean, they're good people, right? But they've, just like everyone else, have been brought up in ways that exploit and oppress others and demean others. And it's unclear necessarily how you can both be friendly and make that camaraderie with them without immediately pushing them away by correcting them or something, or calling them out or whatever.
Because I'm a woman, I have male friends who are misogynistic in ways that are like micro or macro or whatever, and then I have lady friends who internalize that misogyny as well. And a lot of what goes on is like, they might be laughing at something that was very derogatory or offensive, whatever, and I won't be laughing, or they might say something to me that they think is complimenting me in some way or flattering me, whatever, and I will just directly call them out. Sometimes I can be really aggressive or even end a conversation because of it. But a lot of time now it's just like I straight up say like, yo, like that really hurt. I don't agree with anything you just said. I do like these parts of you, and I'll like name different characteristics that they have that I really enjoy. I'm like, but then this one thing that's, this misogyny or something, if that's the one thing that I don't like, it's just like, this is ruining it for me, and it makes me not like you. And this is why, and I will explain maybe a historical context or like a critical analysis of patriarchy, and I won't get too deep into it. I'll just explain like why it's extremely oppressive as a woman to hear that, but also why it's oppressive to them as men to keep participating in patriarchy and perpetuating that. And then also if it's coming from a lady, it's just like that's almost even worse, because just like, yo, you're participating in your own oppression right now, and this is why. And it's like, maybe they're not going to fully understand anything you said to them. They might not totally change the things that they're exercising, the power structures that they're exercising. But in my own experience, those people have over time changed. And even if, a few weeks go by, say they were defensive at first, a few weeks go by, they always come back and they always say, like, I kind of get what you're saying now, because the immediate reaction is when somebody knows that you're right. Like, you might stroke something inside of them. They're like, oh, shit, like, you're totally right, and reflect on that. Or they'll just remain, a jerk, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, thinking about strategy of how you sort of correct people on this is, I don't know, because in some cases I think I think like calling them out is a really useful way, and it may ruin that conversation, and it may be like bad for a little bit, but if you think sort of in the long run of like, I'm just sort of after this going to treat them like we're going to have to deal with each other, and not in like a hostile way, but not like rejecting them too, because I think sort of going back to some of the like nonviolent communication stuff, it's like understanding people's needs, and one of those things is like feeling rejected, like that'll push people away and not have them like deal with and consider some things. So like some of the things that I struggle with is like, when do I need to like challenge people strongly on something, and when is it maybe better to challenge them in a way that isn't like, you need to change, but like, I'm gonna let you know that I'm not okay with this. And how does that affect dynamics, and like how are you like, either are you rejecting them when you're saying this, like both in sort of your body language and in your tone, or is it more of a like, I'm really offended by this in such a way that's like, but we're still like, you still mean something to me and I'm not rejecting you. And like playing around with that and feeling that out is something that I'm like trying to do on a small scale. I'm just beginning to.
Sure. I would say that I'm doing the same thing, and that's why I'm saying like sometimes I'm aggressive, sometimes I'm really whatever, soft, I don't know what the word is. Subtle. Yeah, subtle. No, subtle. I didn't want to say that because I feel like just the nature of me is not that subtle.
Yeah.
It's always kind of intense. But that subtlety is something that I'm trying to learn, because my immediate reaction is just to be like, F off, like, and this conversation's definitely over, or to argue them. But yeah, I guess like looking at a restorative justice model or something, you're like learning to like communicate well to people in a way that it's always and this is probably the biggest trick to learn, is like always communicating in a way that it's being received every time. Yeah.
And I think also like when someone says something really offensive and just like disgusting, and this is like a part of their beliefs, like this happens in different scales like all the time with like even maybe a majority of people, like, right, a lot of people have a lot of internalized misogyny, whether they're male or female, and have like these sort of subtle racist beliefs. But some of the best advice I've ever gotten from a really amazing anarchist in Indiana, I'd said something came up with like dealing with like sort of frats being key to a part of this one strategy in these student strikes. I'm sort of like half joking about like, oh, I guess I'll have to like attend more frat parties. Like, oh no. But and then he sort of responded like, I understand what you're saying, but it's really important to be able to find the beauty in people that like you fundamentally disagree with and who are different from you. And I think that's that can be challenging, but I think it's really important, and seeing people in new ways and trying to like dig for that, like something that makes someone beautiful who isn't immediately appealing to you, or who is sort of repulsive in some way, and sort of trying to figure them out better and understand them, and not even like try to change them, not even on that level yet, but just try to understand them enough that they become someone, more human, that you're not, objectifying as just some like misogynistic piece of whatever. And yeah, I don't know, I think about that a lot.
For sure. And so Sorry, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here and go the other direction now. Because so I think, because I agree with what you're saying. I think it's very adequate, particularly, and I think for most of our interactions, that's the way to go, right? You want to be like, well, like, I completely disagree with you. I don't like the way you act. I don't like the way you treat others. I don't like your life, whatever. But I can see, like, I mean, like you said, the frat guy, like, they enjoy party and pleasure and that sense of community that comes from that. Like, oh, that can be beautiful, right? But when I think of, because I feel like people use this in the other way to protect oppressors. For instance, when I call Bush or Obama war criminals, which they are, and I think that's disgusting. But people will say, well, but think about, I mean, that speech he gave and how he, helped with the Affordable Care Act and brought health care or whatever. Like he's human, and he has a family and stuff. And I'm like, well, that's great, but he's slaughtered thousands of people. And so there's times where I'm like, actually, I don't want to restore this relationship. Like, it's fundamentally wrong. And so I just wanted to get maybe you guys' thought on that, of this other end of where, particularly with the hierarchs or in the more brutal people in our society, like, how do you repair those relationships? Are they worth repairing? Like, I mean, I would happily try and let some of them come back into community, right? Once they step down from their positions of power, step down from the positions of terrorizing and harming others. But I'm not sure I want to take the first step towards forgiving them before that happens.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it's about forgiveness. There is this project called One People's Project. It's an anti-fascist project. Daryl Lamont Jenkins, I believe that's his name. He had said in his interview, don't worry about talking, or actually, it was just like, worry about getting to the people who are going to be on your side first or whatever, rather than going directly to the fascists or something. Because, and it makes sense, because it's like, when you are in any solidarity group or working on solidarity projects, you're not in the oppressor's face saying, we are doing this project and we are going to take you down. You are doing it in a clandestine way, maybe, or not, or a public way too sometimes. And you're building this weapon that is extreme, that becomes really strong to the point that, the oppressor or the politicians or whoever you want to name them are, they're losing their foundation of power. At some point, Paulo Freire says that the oppressed will liberate themselves, and the oppressor will eventually try to come down and join that group of the oppressed who liberated themselves, and they will have to do what the oppressed tell them to do. And I believe that is true. I mean, that means I have to have a lot of hope. I don't know if that's always a thing. Some days it really is, other days it's not. But I guess that's how I would answer your question. And I guess I lean more on the side of, like, the devil advocate. I'm not, like, really worried about changing the people around me that I don't like. I'm more worried about the people that I do really like, who still are falling complacent and complicit in their everyday life, and they're not taking this one thing really seriously, like these tools or skills that you are sharing with them, this knowledge. They're not taking it serious enough. So, and for me in particular, it's like I feel a sense of urgency, like we aren't building something quick enough, that, it's like the idea is that we always want to be one step ahead of the oppressor, right? And right now I feel like we're a couple of steps behind, at least in my current situation, and it sucks.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I mean, and that connects right to what I was trying to push here, which is that sense of urgency, right? And so people will, say, well, we can't just overthrow these people. We can't just terminate the system. I mean, they're people too. Think of all the people that'll be out of their jobs. How are they going to support their kids? I mean, and like, there's legitimacy to those questions, like, in reality. But at the same time, I'm like, the war in prisons have to stop. Like, there's no, like, I'm not going to compromise on this issue. Like, that has to end. And so, like, and I understand that means that in some cases, like, there's not this, well, let's wait till they join us, or like, let's remember that they're beautiful people too, and, you know, we'll find a way for them to fit into our revolution of overthrowing them. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I feel like being able to find value in people and humanize people and empathize with people does not exclude fighting against them. And, yeah, I feel like what you're saying, and I've heard that too, is like appealing to the humanity of other people as a way of pacifying a group that you don't want to act, which I resent. But yeah, we also got a caller, so I didn't hear all of what you had to say. They were this caller was curious about, we'd mentioned on a previous show a podcast by a group of anarchists in Orlando, and they were hoping for more information about that. I didn't know if any of you knew it. Orlando, Florida. It's a city.
We've talked about the Crime Think podcast, which can be found at crimethinc.org/podcast, I think, but you'll find it on the tabs.
And we've also talked about the Final Straw Radio at noblogs.org in Asheville, North Carolina.
And there is Sean Swain's blog and radio show at seanswain.org, which you can find. I think they might be referring to the Crime Think one because they don't. But it's not in Orlando, so that part I'm not sure. But I'd be guessing that's what they would be thinking of.
Yeah, it's also in North Carolina, but you can, type in Crime Think in your Google search engine, it'll come up.
It's Crime Think with a C at the end, so CRIMETHINC.
Yep.
.org.
All right. Did you?
Sorry if that wasn't helpful enough, caller. But do you know, is there a source online that you can find that has like a page of links where you can find other sorts of anarchist podcasts and outlets?
Yeah, so if you go to the Final Straw Radio at noblogs.org, they have in their links page a list of links to radio shows and podcasts that are anarchistic, I guess. And then also if you go to Unwelcome Guest, it's a archive full of all kinds of, there's even liberal, anarchists, whatever, Marxists, different radios, all different kind of radio shows that are quote unquote radical, right? And there's like thousands of links and shows uploaded, and you can search a specific word and find a podcast related to that word. So
yeah, and we've also shared stuff from audioanarchy.org. I don't know where they're out of. The internet.
I forgot. Yeah, it's our Argon collective. I forget what.
Can you just one more time for us, Loon? What was the name of that blog or archive? The podcast
it's
archive?
It's called Unwelcome Guest. I don't remember. It's .net, .org, .com, whatever.
Yeah, and we're recording this episode, right? So if you've forgotten that, you can find it on our website. And what's that website again, Loon?
flyoverinfoshop.org, and it should just pop up on the front page. We're in the process of organizing our website, but we will start uploading our shows very soon. There are several shows in the past with one of our beloved ex-members, Felix,
Felix.
who had a 4-minute segment to play today, but unfortunately, the file that it was sent in, I cannot.
4 minutes? Only 4 minutes?
Yeah, because I told him to please shorten his segments because we have no ability to respond when they're 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
Especially when he answers all of the questions and also references tons of authors and folks that I've never read. I did want to read something briefly. There was this introduction to this little zine called Revolutionary Solidarity. And I think I'm going to close with that. So first I'm going to play a song and we'll come back and we can read this little paragraph here because it's kind of beautiful. And yep, we'll talk to you in a few.
Man, motherfuckers following the nigga around, dude. That's real. True shit, y'all. Fuck these feds, redneck, racist motherfuckers. Man, I don't wanna run no more, but I know that if I stop, I'll be another nigga headed to heaven, hanging with Pop. These motherfuckers look at me like I'm a slanger, making threats to my family, dog, I'm in danger. Who do you call when these agents want you dead and they hit these penitentiaries and niggas make a pledge? So I dip and duck the feds. All my homies stuck out on indictments, caught up on the phone talking prices. 25 to life's the mandatory minimum. My whole community is treated like they criminals. Crying convictions, getting motherfuckers hung. Gotta see how on the inside and everybody's song. Mothers and fathers separated from their sons. Households are broken, you couldn't hold your tongue. If it's yours, say it's yours, take the case, do your time. You was out here getting money from it, everything was fine. Now you crying in your jail cell, stressing on the case. And the DEA's at a nigga every other day. I can see it in your face, in the middle of your soul. You in question of your manhood, homie. Keep it cold. We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We don't trust in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We ain't trusting in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. See, I be on some street shit, don't talk to police. I won't accept a visit from agents who wanna see if I got shit to say about a nigga case. I'm a motherfucking nigga through and through, I ain't gay. Know a nigga caught a case and he took his 25, set it out on appeal and gave him back that time. A soldier in his mind and his actions said the same. Told a cracker, tell your mammy suck his dick and see with James. Ain't no motherfucking game, we been living this for real. When the government is working, real niggas never squeal. Right here the truth revealed, drawing you a mouse. Yeah, you rapping, but the homie Lil Pots can't get out. Niggas, they hit the pen, they get charged and get out. On a Rule 35, he informing for the cops. You can hear it in his voice, I listen to the tapes. Now you showing up in court, testifying for the state. We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We don't trust in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We ain't trusting in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. I'm knowing all the scams, all the tricks to the trade. Know a nigga trying to get clean and you get in the way. Know a nigga trying to get green and you stick out the bait. Cause a nigga like a dope fiend can't rehabilitate. Still we sticking to the G code, we play it by the rules. We don't fuck around with new niggas cause new niggas is fools. We don't photograph the homies that'll catch a nigga up. On the picture you a victim, bottom line nigga fuck. Only connect with real, staying down with the truth. I got love for you, man, you a real nigga spook. My nigga Spoonie G, I can only name a few, but it's 1,000 motherfuckers in the pen bulletproof. So this one here for you, I'ma rep it till I die. Fuck a 5K1, check his PSI. Send his ass to the top if he say he's sitting home. He a motherfucking snitch, snitching niggas need a song. We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We don't trust in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. We don't talk to police, we don't make a peace bond. We ain't trusting in the judicial system, we shoot guns. We rely on the streets, we do battle in the hood. I was born in the G code, embedded in my blood. We don't talk to police, we rely on the streets, dog. Say we don't talk to police, but we rely on the streets, dog.
Welcome back. You're listening to Counterpower After Hours. You're here with Loon.
And Moss.
And Alex.
All right. We've had quite a swell show happening here. So I am just going to read a small introduction in a zine called Revolutionary Solidarity, written by several folks. And this person who wrote the introduction's name is...
I don't remember any of her names.
Daniela
Savignon?
No, Daniela Carmani. I can't say it. You said it so much better.
I don't have it in front of me anymore.
Carmignani. There you go. If I try to say her last name, I would totally have butchered it. I'm not very good at that. Okay. I'm trying to figure out this microphone thing. Okay. The concept of solidarity is not only used and abused by various reformist, syndicalist, and humanitarian movements, and even power itself. It is also sadly emptied of any content by many anarchists. The leveling is such as to reveal a symbolic attitude worthy of the church, but which allows us to put our conscience at rest. Counter-information and propaganda in the lead, demonstrations, true possessions, then nothing, provoke a feeling of powerlessness, a pernicious frustration that sees justification open the way to resignation. We discover that everything crumbles there where the mentality of the group and quantity thought it was strong. Nothing changes as we enter a vicious circle with mournful calls to a miserable bartering with a state one wanted to fight. When individuals find themselves alone at night, no longer supported by collective strength, the arms of Morpheus transform to the imprisoned comrades one wanted to support, to whom one wanted to express one's solidarity into real nightmare with no escape. So, should we no longer show solidarity to imprisoned comrades given that it serves no end? Never! A movement that is not capable of looking after its comrades in prison is destined to die, and at a high price under atrocious torture. The reflection must be made in other terms. What does it mean to express revolutionary solidarity? Basically, the reply is not all that difficult. Solidarity lies in action. Action that sinks its roots in one's own project that is carried on coherently and proudly too, especially in times when it might be dangerous even to express one's ideas publicly. A project that expresses solidarity with joy in the game of life that above all makes us free ourselves, destroys alienation, exploitation, mental poverty, opening up infinite spaces devoted to experimentation and the continual activity of one's mind in a project aimed at realizing itself in insurrection. A project which is not specifically linked to the repression that has struck our comrades, but which continues to evolve and make social tension grow, to the point of making it explode so strongly that the prison walls fall down by themselves. A project which is a point of reference and stimulus for the imprisoned comrades, who in turn are point of reference for it. Revolutionary solidarity is the secret that destroys all walls, expressing love and rage at the same time as one's own insurrection in the struggle against capital and the state. God damn, that was a good explanation of solidarity.
Certainly.
Do either of you have any final thoughts or comments? No one can hear you.
I said no.
All right. Alex?
I'm sorry, I'm running slow here.
Okay.
It became 2 o'clock all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah. It's
head.
2 o'clock, 2 a.m. here, guys and ladies. Once again, if you want to write us, especially if you're in USP Marion, you can write to us at the Flyover Info Shop, 214 North Washington Street, Carbondale, Illinois, 62901. Address it to PSWG. That is the Prison Solidarity Working Group. You can also find our previous shows at flyoverinfoshop.org. And you can find us on Facebook if you do that thing. But that's all we got tonight.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, again, say thank you to, like, the people who have written us,
Yes.
and who have, given us feedback and supported us. Like, it makes our hearts sing. So thank you.
Yeah, and thanks, John, for the wonderful interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
At Georgia Correctional Center. or Georgia Conflict Center, sorry. Georgia Conflict Center. You can look up John Lash. All right, y'all. Until next time.
Good night.
Love and rage.
Yeah.